Hello everyone, I'm Adam Ebert and welcome to Can I Teach It, a show that explores the teachability of pop culture across mediums. Today's episode is on the film Minari.
This book is filled with beautiful prose. This film cert acts a bit on the nose. This album features just one hit, but can I teach it?
With me, Mr. Ebert. So Minari, written and directed by Lee Isaac Chung, is a semi-autobiographical film about a Korean immigrant who relocates his family from California to rural Arkansas for a chance at living the American dream. The film centers around Jacob and Monica, the patriarch and matriarch of the Yee family, who, along with their children David and Anne, find themselves in an entirely new world. Jacob has plans to grow Korean vegetables on this new farm in an effort to find more fulfilling career opportunities than what was afforded to him and his wife in California. Complications arise as their young son David struggles with a heart murmur. Monica's mother joins the family in their new home, and Jacob and Monica encounter deepening conflicts with both this new farm and their marriage. It is a film that I wholeheartedly enjoyed and one that has stayed with me since I first watched it. Now, Minari ended up losing the Best Picture Oscar to Nomadland at this year's Oscar ceremony. And with that, something I wanted to address in terms of awards is what wins Best Picture doesn't matter. What matters is the lasting effect. Over the past 20 years, I could easily go down the list and know that the majority of the films that won Best Picture have had zero lasting effect in addition to having beat out clearly better films. What matters most is something timeless or with lasting resonance. Do any of the films capture a moment in time or the Hollywood zeitgeist and will ultimately be forgotten? Or are they stories that will resonate with people no matter the year? Ultimately, love what you love and forget the rest. So with all that being said, let's talk about how would you teach it? So in terms of how I would teach it, two of the courses I've taught in my time as a teacher are American Literature and AP Language and Composition. Both of those are considered junior level English courses at the schools that I've taught them at. And I'd like you all to consider that as I discuss unit texts and the complexity of this particular unit. Now, my idea for Minari is a unit that is quite widely taught in those courses that I mentioned, the American Dream unit. The American Dream unit comes along with the framing essential question, is the American dream achievable today? Certainly, there is the idealized American dream that was packaged and presented to U.S. citizens in the world abroad at the turn of the 20th century and in the aftermath of World War II. That so-called American dream is one that rewards hard work, values perseverance, and allows both men and women the ability to achieve their dreams and to be recognized for who they are regardless of background and identity. As a film, Minari most certainly explores the struggles and fragility of achieving that American dream. Jacob wants to forge his own career as a farmer, where he sees far more potential for success than the chicken sorting he and Monica had found themselves doing in the past in California. But the work the farm calls for is difficult, and Jacob strives for self-sufficiency despite the great challenges that he encounters with this new land. The immigrant experience and perspective of the American dream is ingrained in both this country's history and this film's narrative. As a product of colonialism, the United States is a country composed of and constructed by immigrants. Minari is a testament to that idea. The Yees come to America seeking opportunity despite the many challenges they know they may face. The Korean immigrants in the Arkansas town they move to are often relegated to low-paying factory work, but based on the money saved from his work in California, Jacob and his family are allowed the opportunity for something more. With that comes conflict, growing pains, but also in the end, hope for the future. I think the examination of the American dream through the perspective of an immigrant family is something that can be explored and discussed with your students. And as you consider potentially adding this to a pre-existing unit, particularly an American Dream or American Experience unit, I think you're going to find a lot of success. Now, as the American dream has its nuances and a variety of interpretations, I think it's necessary to recommend several other texts as companion pieces to Minari. I did some research of my own and consulted some friends and colleagues to compile a list of potential companion pieces or companion texts to contemporize an American Dream unit. Such suggested companion texts are as follows: Middlesex, Cherry, The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, There, The Book of Unknown American, Behold the Dreamers, Between the World and Me, Just Mercy, Evicted, Call Me American, Dear America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen. In terms of assessment, if you're sticking with an American Dream synthesis unit, Minari is great as one of the sources in that unit, as you have students use what the film is presenting and arguing about the American Dream in a potential end of unit essay. Responding to the prompt, is the American Dream achievable today? If you're not teaching American literature or AP language and composition or AP literature and composition, I still think that you can do many things in a different course, many of the same things in a different course. Minari presents a unique vision of the American experience for this Korean family. Ask your students questions like, what does America mean to this family? How are they experiencing American culture and blending that with their own cultural identities? A final caveat of all this is that I think another film you could potentially compare Minari with is that Best Picture winner, Nomadland. That film from Chloe Zhao explores a completely different experience of the American dream, American experience that could lead to some great conversations, great discussions, great analysis. While I think that Minari is ultimately the better made and more effective film, there is some great potential for comparison between the two. But with all that being said, let's talk about whether or not you should teach it. In terms of should you teach it, there are naturally some things to consider with any film. Minari is largely presented in subtitles as the majority of the dialogue is in Korean. But I personally think that shouldn't deride your plans to teach it. In fact, subtitles films often engage their audience more in the fact that they are reading the film, which I'm sure some people could roll their eyes at, but I think it's true. If that's a parameter, subtitles, that won't fly with you or your students, then you shouldn't teach it. If you don't think your students can be bothered to do a little bit of reading within their viewing experience, then you shouldn't teach it. I truly believe that Minari is something you should teach, as it is an incredible addition to not only an American Dream unit and units with similar themes, but also potentially an introduction to film unit where students learn the language of film and use that knowledge to analyze the decisions being made by the filmmakers. Again, Minari is a beautiful story, expertly told by Lee Isaac Chung and his cast and his crew. And in looking at the range of media I've discussed so far on this show, I think this stands as one of the most highly recommended in terms of things that you can bring into your classroom. So with this episode, I've concluded my initial cycle or round of media that I will discuss. Everything is subject to change, but I'd roughly like to discuss a television show, an album, a game, and a film each round. I do have ideas where I can expand upon those 4 categories, and you may see that soon. I'm also always open to suggestions for topics and media to discuss in a future episode. So please be sure to leave those suggestions in the comments if you have them. And also please be sure to like, share, and smash that subscribe button. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Mr. Adam Abort, and on Instagram at Can I Teach It. But until next time, folks, happy teaching.